I'm Libby, and I work for Business in the Community. We've got a stand over there, so you can come and find out more about us. But just to give you a little background to Business in the Community, because it's very relevant to the subject of what I'm talking about today before I get started. So we were set up as an organisation about 40 years ago, very much driven by businesses coming together to respond to inner city riots in Brixton and Hoxton and say, how can we work collaboratively to try and tackle some of the most pressing issues in inner cities? And obviously those issues continue today, and we continue full force. We've got about 800 member companies, most of them big companies, really diverse, as you'll see in a minute. And they see us very much as a platform to come together and do that collaboration. So we do a lot of work around things like employability, supporting social enterprises, making sure that we have healthy workplaces, employee well-being, diversity, age, all that kind of thing. I work in the environment team, which some people would see as quite separate to all of the community stuff that we're doing. To me, they're all part of the same thing, basically. You cannot have healthy communities if you don't have a healthy environment. And actually, when we're thinking about our environment and how we want it to make it healthy, we need to think about both together. Circularity, to me, is a fantastic opportunity to do that. For us as an organisation and more broadly, for us, the concept of circularity needs to sit above everything. So I talk about circular principles and making sure that we're thinking in a circular way and embedding these circular principles across everything that we do. And I'll go on and talk about some of that in a minute. To move on from Business in the Community then, I'm very lucky. I'm responsible for our Circular Economy Task Force. Anne, who spoke from Premier Sustain, they're involved in this, as you'll see there, but we've got a really diverse group of quite significant companies who have come together and committed to work collaboratively to bring the circular economy to life within the UK, through raising awareness of opportunities, but most importantly through getting stuck in. So the Prince of Wales is our founding patron, and he brought business leaders together almost 3 years ago now and said, come on, I've been banging on about this for 30 years, tell me what's happening. And they sat there politely and said, well, we've all got great case studies to share, but that's it. It's sort of case studies bubbling up here and there and not all joined together. We're not sort of transforming our linear economy into a circular one. We're just giving good examples of what we could do. So the task force came together, I say, to try and create more bubbles. I'm very sort of organic in how I think we're approaching it. What we're trying to do is raise awareness and share ideas of very practical things that people can do to get others going out and sort of looking where they can have the best impact and start doing things themselves. So this task force, as I said, and as you can see, is very diverse. We've got people like Unilever through to Anglian Water, Arup, lots of different sectors. So we had a lot of discussion about what we could do, how we could come together to collaborate. And that's where we homed in on the circular office, because we all have an office. And as soon as you start thinking about it, it's actually home to a phenomenal range of different resources, from the fabric of the building to the fittings, furnishings, and then the things that we use on an everyday basis. So the circular, don't worry about not being able to read the small print here, it's not relevant to what I'm saying. So the Circular Office Initiative, we started up about 18 months ago now. Some of you who were here yesterday will have heard Bridget Jackson from PwC talking about all of the things that they had done in their offices. Bridget's quite a guru in this space, and she has worked for 10 years relentlessly and thought of every sort of aspect of circularity in an office. So most of the work that we're doing within this is focused on the operational piece, because any business, any organisation can do that at any point in time, thinking about how they're procuring things through to how they're then optimising the use of these things once they've got them in the offices, and then how they dispose of them. We're also, as we move forward now, and one of the reasons why we're excited to be here over the course of these few days, we want to get stuck into some construction projects and big refurbishments. Coming out of this work, we've produced the Circular Office Guide that Anne mentioned. In this, it's packed with great stories of what people have done, but we also set out why. A lot of people come along to workshops that we hold and say, well, I get this and I'm really excited, but I need to make the case internally. Why does this matter to my organisation? And people always sort of think that, the environmental drivers are huge here. Of course they are. We all know we're facing a big environmental crisis, and that's very much what's driven our work. But actually the social aspect is so important. And that's what we drive home, and it's sort of throughout this guide. We've got plenty of copies over there, but throughout the guide we talk about that. So we've heard Anne talking about employment, training, skills development associated with circular economy opportunities. A lot of the work that we're doing is about bringing big businesses together with small businesses, with social enterprises, with really innovative ideas, and supporting them to get those ideas off the ground. We also heard Anne talk about encouraging organisations to give the stuff that they're not using to charities and other organisations who can really benefit from them. It's amazing the number of organisations, when you talk to them, they say, yeah, we've just got like rooms stacked with old stuff that we're not using, and that can be put to use in other places. Another big social driver as well is employees. So particularly with all of the discussions and awareness around plastics, employees are really keen to do stuff and get stuck in, not just at home but in their offices as well. I walked in, I'll use this example in a minute, but when I started on this work, I walked into our offices and I saw a poster saying our carpets are made from recycled fishing nets, and it just immediately made me feel better about where I worked. And the final thing, I think, from a social perspective and from my perspective, is that this circularity is all about collaboration. We can't do it without collaboration. So it's a very social activity in that respect. And we've talked about collaboration for years, but I believe that that circularity brings a real opportunity to actually bring that collaboration to life. And over in our office over there, we've got examples of PwC in their More London office. They fuel their combined heat and power machine, or whatever it is, using used cooking oil from neighbouring restaurants as one example. They take their used textiles, and that gets turned into insulation for cars. It's all about collaboration. It's about one person's waste turning into another's resource. So I'm going to end on a few examples that I hope will inspire you. Interface is a company that you might have heard about. They do great things. Their chief exec a couple of decades ago had an epiphany and just thought, help, we're a petroleum intensive company, we're doing lots of damage to the world, I want to reverse that, I want to do good. So there are two things really that are very significant to this. One is that they use as much recycled materials as they can in their products, and the fishing net example comes from Interface. So we have Interface carpets, and they have schemes in Indonesia and the Philippines where they work with local people and buy used reclaimed fishing nets from them. And then they're also very, very keen, less relevant to this discussion, but very keen to taking products back and trying to reduce the amount that we're sending to landfill. My second example, I just love, and I talk about this wherever I go. Recycling Lives. They run prison academies across the north of England, providing paid employment and skills development in prisons for ex-offenders. So offering them an opportunity to learn skills that will help them to get employment once they've left, and indeed Recycling Lives often employ them once they've left prison. They're partnering with Amy, who are on our task force and facility manage a lot of prisons in the north of the country, to actually take waste from the prison and employ ex-offenders in turning that waste into useful things as well. And it's this statistic here that's just amazing, and to me just speaks the real power of sort of this circular thinking. So 6% of people that they work with in this scheme go on to reoffend once they're released, and that compares to a national figure of about 66-67%. So they're reducing that from 66 to 6%, helping people to have new skills and a sense of worth. So in the context of the Circular Office, we've been working with Recycling Lives, encouraging organisations to donate their used IT equipment to Recycling Lives. So you can see, I'm not too sure what they're picking apart there. There'll be engineers and people more with technological skills that will know, but it's televisions, IT equipment, that kind of thing. I mentioned the importance of supporting It's interesting. I sort of hadn't envisaged this when we set out on our work, but one of the things that business in the community provides a great platform. So we've got these big businesses collaborating, wanting to do good things. But with our work on the circular economy, one of the things that I see that we're doing is almost creating a marketplace to bring people like PwC together with these smaller social enterprises that are coming up with really good ideas. So this is just a few examples of some of the relationships that PwC's fostered. So we've got an example a bit like Premier Sustain here of remanufactured furniture, old bikes being refurbished, and then car sharing club. Yeah, that's it. I mentioned, just closing on this really, I mentioned carpets. I'm using this example to say it's not just big PwC type organisations that can do this. We had a small office in Manchester that was closing down, and instead of just getting rid of the furniture, we looked around and found local charities who were very keen to take it on. And another nice example, our food waste that is composted, and we give it to local schools in Hackney where our offices are. So thank you, that's me.